Good evening. This is Victor Graves. Whether you meant to find us or not, you have tuned your receiver to the lost signal. There is a season in childhood when summer seems endless. The days stretch so long they feel less like time than territory. Sunburned shoulders, wet towels hung over porch railings, tin cups of lemonade sweating in the grass, mosquito bites scratched open in sleep, the smell of lake water in a child's hair, and the taste of smoke after a campfire song shouted too loudly into the dark. The ancients had a name for the worst of it, the dog days. The Greeks watched a star rise with the sun in late July, and they believed that star brought fevers, dry wells, spoiled meat, and a certain restlessness in the dead. Dogs went mad in the heat. Children went strange in it. The boundary between the living world and whatever lies beneath it grew, the old writers said, soft. We do not believe such things now. We send our children to camp. Tonight I have 3 letters before me. 3 adults writing from the long shadow of childhood. 3 different camps, 3 different summers, separated by decades and miles. The first comes from a man named Harold Voss, who attended Camp Juniper Cross in the summer of 1924. He writes about a stray dog. The second comes from Elaine Mercer, who spent 1 week at Camp Hollowmere in 1931. She writes about a light over a lake. The third comes from Ruth Ann Calder, who writes about a baseball field, a boy, and a question she first heard in the summer of 1912 and has been answering for 12 summers. I receive a great many letters at this hour. Not all of them, I have come to understand, were sent. Let us begin. Dear Mr. Graves, I was 11 years old the summer we tried to feed the stray dog that lived beyond the dry creek bed. The older boys said it had always been there. Their fathers had heard it howling when they were campers. One counselor, drunk on stolen beer behind the supply shed, told us his grandfather had once seen it standing at the edge of the chapel fire when Juniper Cross was nothing but tents, a pump, and a wooden cross nailed between 2 pines. Camp Juniper Cross sat in a hard, dry part of the country where the trees grew thin and the dirt turned your socks red. This was 1924. I was small, angry, and poor enough to know I was poor, which is a difficult thing for a child. My uncle paid for camp. He said a boy needed woods. My mother packed my clothes into a brown suitcase with 1 broken latch. She marked my underwear with my initials. She gave me 2 nickels wrapped in a handkerchief and told me not to spend both on the first day. When the church truck pulled away, I saw her standing in the dust with 1 hand raised and the other pressed over her mouth. There were 6 of us in Fox Den cabin. Me, Benny Arlo, Michael Reed, Curtis Stain, Owen Price, and a boy named Noah Bellwether. I want to tell you about Noah carefully, because for more than 20 years I told myself the wrong story about him. The story I told myself was that Noah was a soft, lonely boy who got picked on by bullies and made friends with a stray dog because he had no one else. The story I told myself was that the cruelty of the cabin summoned something out of the woods, and that something punished the cruel and rewarded the kind. That is a comforting story. It is wrong. Noah was 12. He had thick glasses, soft hands, and hair that never stayed flat. The other boys called him Cowbell by the 3rd day, for reasons I do not remember and do not want to. They mooed when he spoke. They hid his shoes. Curtis Stain, who was the worst of us, once put a dead frog under his pillow and laughed for an hour about the face Noah made. I did not moo. I want to say that plainly. I also did not tell them to stop. There are sins that make noise and sins that sit quietly on the bunk beside you. At 11, I only feared the first kind. But here is the part I have had to think about. Noah did not behave like a bullied child. He did not cry. He did not flinch. He did not write home asking to leave. When Curtis put the frog under his pillow, Noah looked at it for a long moment, then carried it outside with both hands, gentle as a priest carrying a relic, and buried it behind the chapel. He was 12, and he buried a frog like he had done it before. The first time I heard the dog, it was after lights out. The cabin was hot. The air smelled of pine boards, dirty socks, and the sour dampness of boys who had swum in the lake and refused to wash properly. Someone was whispering a joke. Someone else was scratching mosquito bites in the dark. Then we heard a low whine outside the cabin. It was not a howl and not quite a bark, but a thin, patient sound that seemed to wait for us to understand it. Every boy went still. Curtis whispered, "That's him." Michael asked who he meant, and Curtis said it was the old stray, the one that lived past the creek bed, the black dog with no collar, skinny as sticks. Outside, the whine came again, closer this time, and Noah sat up. He did not look frightened. He looked like a man hearing his name called from the next room. "It sounds hungry," he said. The next morning at breakfast, Noah wrapped 2 sausage links in a napkin and slipped them into his pocket. After chores, he walked toward the North Trail alone, and Curtis followed him, and Benny followed Curtis, and I followed Benny, because cowardice is often mistaken for curiosity when you are 11 years old. The dry creek bed was not much to look at, only a shallow cut in the earth filled with pale stones and dead leaves. But beyond it, the trees grew thicker, and the air there was cooler in a way that did not comfort. It felt like stepping into the mouth of a cellar. Noah crouched near a flat stone and unwrapped the napkin. He placed the 2 sausage links on the stone, already sweating grease in the heat. And then he stood. He did not call. He did not whistle. He simply waited. The dog came out of the trees. It was black mostly, with fur matted by red dust, long legs, a narrow body, ribs showing beneath the hide, one ear standing up while the other folded over, and a tail that hung low and straight behind it. It did not look rabid, which might have been easier. It looked old, not sick, but old, as if age had gathered under its skin in layers. Its eyes were yellow-green, bright even in daylight. It did not look at the sausage. It looked at Noah. And Noah, Mr. Graves, did not look back at it the way a frightened child looks at a strange animal. He looked back at it the way you greet someone you have been expecting. Curtis picked up a pebble. I told him not to, but he smiled at me and threw it anyway. The pebble struck the dirt near the dog's front paw, and the dog did not flinch, did not turn, did not even blink. Curtis's smile faded. Noah stepped forward and said, "It's okay." He said it to the dog, but he was looking at us when he said it. The dog lowered its head and ate 1 sausage link slowly, watching Noah the whole time. Then it took the second sausage in its mouth and walked backward into the trees, not turning, backward, 1 careful step after another, until the woods had swallowed it. I have thought about that detail for most of my adult life. A dog does not walk backward into woods. A dog turns and trots away. The thing in those woods walked backward because it did not want to take its eyes off Noah. And Noah did not want to take his eyes off it either. That night, the scratching started. It was not at the door, but at the wall below Noah's bunk. A slow scrape and pause, scrape and pause, that seemed to keep time with his breathing. Noah did not get up. He did not turn over. He lay perfectly still on his back, with his hands folded on his chest, like a child laid out at a funeral, while the sound continued beneath him. I have wondered since whether the dog was scratching to be let in, or whether something inside the cabin was scratching to be let out. By Friday, the dog was sleeping under the chapel benches in the afternoon shade, and the counselors pretended not to see it. That was the strangest part. Children notice what adults look away from. Mr. Evers, our senior counselor, was a sunburned man with long sideburns and a silver whistle he chewed when he was angry. He carried a rifle in his truck. The first time he saw the dog near the chapel, his face changed. He did not chase it, and he did not shout. He walked slowly backward, the same way the dog had walked backward into the trees, until he reached the dining hall steps. Later, behind the kitchen, I heard Mr. Evers arguing with the camp director. The director said, "We can't start frightening the children with ghost stories." Mr. Evers said, "Then stop telling them it's a..." He did not finish the sentence. I remember that exactly. He stopped on the article, as if the word that came next was one he could not make himself say in daylight. The director walked away, and Mr. Evers stood there for a long time, with the silver whistle pressed to his lower lip. That evening, Curtis decided we were going to prove something. I do not know what. That we were brave, perhaps, or that Noah was stupid, or that the dog was only a dog. Cruel boys never need a good reason, only an audience. After supper, when the sun was low and the sky had gone the color of hot copper, Curtis took a leftover chicken bone from the trash barrel outside the kitchen and said, "Let's see if Noah's pet can do tricks." Noah told him to leave it alone. Curtis shoved him. Noah fell backward into the dirt, not hard enough to hurt him, but enough to make him small. Then the dog appeared at the edge of the dining hall shadow. No one had seen it come. It stood beside the rain barrel, thin and black, one ear up and one ear folded over, its yellow-green eyes fixed on Curtis. Curtis held out the bone and told it to sit. The dog stared. Curtis told it again, and the dog sat. A few boys gasped, and Curtis looked surprised, then pleased. He lifted the bone higher and told it to beg. The dog rose on its hind legs, not like a trained dog, not bouncing or reaching, but standing straight up, with its front paws hanging close to its chest and its head tilted slightly to one side. Its long black body rose taller than Curtis, taller than Mr. Evers, and for 1 second, every child in that yard forgot how to breathe. Its mouth opened and its tongue hung out, too long and too dark, wet and almost human in its thickness. And Noah, lying in the dirt where Curtis had pushed him, smiled. That is the part I left out for years, Mr. Graves, even from myself. Noah was lying in the dirt, and he was smiling, not in triumph and not in vengeance, but in recognition. The way you smile when an old friend walks into a room. Curtis dropped the bone. The dog fell back onto 4 legs. Mr. Evers came running, blowing his whistle and shouting for everyone to get inside. The dog walked away. Noah watched it go with that same small smile on his face. That night, the heat broke, not with rain, but with pressure. The air grew heavy and strange. Clouds covered the stars. Sometime after midnight, I woke to the sound of licking, wet, slow, and patient. Ah! Then Curtis screamed. It was the kind of scream that empties a room of childhood. Curtis was on the lower bunk across from mine, kicking and thrashing while something dark moved beneath his blanket. His feet hammered the mattress, and his hands clawed at the wall as he screamed for someone to get it off him. The blanket slid down, and I saw his ankle first, or what was left of it. Something had chewed through the soft place above his heel. Blood sheeted down his foot, and white bone flashed in the light when the screen door banged open and Mr. Evers rushed in with a flashlight. Benny began screaming, too. Michael vomited over the edge of his bunk. Noah was sitting upright in bed, still and watching. The flashlight beam jumped across the bunks, across our faces, across Curtis's bloody leg, and then stopped at the foot of Noah's bunk. The dog sat there under Noah's dangling feet. Its mouth was clean. Not a drop of blood marked its muzzle. It looked at Mr. Evers, then at Noah, and Noah placed one hand on the dog's head. The dog closed its eyes. Mr. Evers raised the rifle. Noah said, "Don't." Not loudly and not angrily, just don't. The way you tell a friend not to embarrass himself in front of a stranger. Mr. Evers froze. I remember the silence that followed. Curtis crying, boys breathing too fast, and the old cabin ticking in the heat. The dog opened its eyes, then crawled backward under Noah's bunk. There was no space under Noah's bunk. I swear to you, Mr. Graves, there was no space. Our trunks were stored there, along with shoes, a baseball glove, and a pile of dirty towels. But the dog folded itself into the dark beneath that bed as if entering a hole much deeper than the cabin allowed. Mr. Evers dropped to one knee and shone the flashlight under the bunk. There was nothing there but Noah's suitcase, one broken latch, just like mine. Camp closed the next morning. They called it an animal attack, and that phrase has followed me all my life. There was no mention of the dog standing like a man, no mention of the counselors pretending not to see it, and no mention of Noah Bellwether smiling in the dirt. Curtis survived. He lost the foot. I do not know what became of him after. Noah's mother came in a blue motor car, crying before she reached the office. When she tried to hug him, Noah stood stiffly with his arms at his sides. She called him baby, and he looked past her toward the woods. The dog was sitting at the tree line. Mrs. Bellwether did not see it, or if she did, she gave no sign. Noah finally hugged his mother, but he did it awkwardly, like someone who had studied affection from across a room. When they drove away, the dog trotted behind the motor car until it reached the end of the camp road. Then it stopped, sat down, and watched them leave. I told myself a comforting story for many years, Mr. Graves. I told myself the dog had chosen Noah because Noah was kind, and the cruel boys had been punished because they were cruel. But I have stopped telling myself comforting stories. The dog did not choose Noah because Noah was kind. The dog chose Noah because Noah was ready. I do not know what Noah was before Juniper Cross. I do not know whether his mother knew or his father, or whether the thing in the woods had simply been waiting for the right summer and the right church truck to bring its kind to it. But I know the cruelty of Curtis Stain and the cowardice of boys like me were not the cause of what happened. We were the camouflage. A boy with thick glasses who buries frogs and gets called cowbell can disappear from a summer camp, and the only story anyone tells afterward is about the bullies who drove him to it. No one looks at the dog. In the summer of 1949, I saw Noah Bellwether again at a filling station outside Wichita. I was 36. It was August, and the air above the road trembled with heat. I went inside for a bottle of pop and a paper cup of coffee that tasted like it had been boiled since breakfast. When I came back out, a black dog stood beside the motor car, one ear standing up and the other folded over, looking no older than it had in 1924. Beside it stood Noah Bellwether. He was a man now, or close to one, tall and thin, with hair too black for his age, and eyes that caught the sun with a yellow-green shine. His glasses were gone. The dog leaned against his leg, and Noah scratched behind its ear. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Noah looked at me and said, "Harold." His voice was dry and low, but it was his, not a copy, not a trick. Noah's voice dragged across 25 years of dust and silence. I did not answer. A family came out of the station then, a mother, a father, and a little girl with a bottle of orange soda clutched in both hands. The girl saw the dog and smiled. "Puppy," she said. Noah looked at her, and the dog looked at her in the exact same moment. Then Noah crouched down to the girl's height. He had the same small smile he had worn in the dirt at Juniper Cross, the smile of recognition. He said something to her. I could not hear it. The girl laughed. Her parents were arguing about a map and did not notice. Noah stood, looked at me one more time, and then he and the dog walked together toward the ditch beyond the filling station. The heat made them shimmer. For a second, their shadows crossed on the dirt, and I could not tell which shadow belonged to the man and which belonged to the dog. Then they went down into the weeds and were gone. I drove away fast. I have wondered all these years what Noah said to that little girl. I have wondered whether her parents ever sent her to summer camp. I have wondered what name she would call him by if she met him again at 12, scratching at the wall below her bunk. Signed, Harold Voss. A stray dog. There are few creatures better suited to test the heart of a child. A child sees ribs beneath fur and thinks only of hunger. A child sees no collar and thinks only of loneliness. Old things know how to wear familiar shapes. Mr. Voss writes that the dog had lived beyond the creek bed for hundreds of years. I do not think that is quite right. I think the dog had been coming to the creek bed for hundreds of years. I think it goes where it is invited. I think it leaves when it is full. And I think somewhere a man named Noah Bellwether still walks beside it. And the little girl from the filling station is a grandmother now, and her grandchildren are at camp. Our second letter tonight comes from a different decade and a different country of childhood. There is no dog in it, no paw prints in the dust, and no old thing panting beneath the bunk. Only a lake, a light, and a single word that adults could not hear. This letter comes from Elaine Mercer. She was 10 years old when she went to Camp Hollowmere in the summer of 1931. She writes that she has spent the years since trying to decide whether the lake made them cruel. I am sorry to tell her when next we speak that this was the wrong question. Dear Mr. Graves, for 19 years I asked the wrong question. I asked whether the lake had made us cruel. I asked it the way a nurse asks whether a fever caused the shaking, when the truth is that something deeper caused both, and the fever was only how the body announced it. I am a nurse, Mr. Graves. I went into nursing because I thought tending wounds might answer for having once helped make one. It does not. But the work taught me how to look at a thing and call it by its proper name. And the proper name for what happened at Camp Hollowmere in the summer of 1931 is not the name I have been giving it. I was 10 years old that summer. My little brother Thomas had died in March. He was 4 years old, taken by fever and buried before the crocuses came up. After that, our house changed its breathing. My mother moved softly from room to room. My father stayed late at the shop. No one knew what to say to me, so they said practical things. Eat your toast, button your coat, do not sit so near the window. When the church brochure arrived, my mother held it as if it were medicine. 2 weeks at a Christian camp in northern Wisconsin. She told me it would be good for me. I nodded, because children agree to things adults need to believe. Camp Hollowmere sat deep among pines and birch trees, with a black lake at the bottom of the hill. The lake was called Hollowmere, too, though no one spoke the name with much affection. We called it the water. The older girls called it the Black Plate. At dusk, it looked less like water than an opening. Our cabin was Sparrow House. 12 girls, 10 and 11 years old, watched over by Miss Della, a tired young woman with her hair pinned too tightly and the smell of lavender soap on her hands. She was not unkind. That may be the worst thing I can say about her. She believed children were mostly good if fed, washed, prayed over, and put to bed on time. Children benefit from that mistake. By the second day, the cabin had arranged itself around a girl named Lydia Trask. Here is where I have lied to myself for 19 years. I have told this story before, in my own head, with Lydia at the center as the cause. Lydia the cruel, Lydia the magnetic, Lydia who could place an empty bowl in the middle of a room and make all of us pretend it was full. I made her the source because if she was the source, then the rest of us were only her victims. But I have nursed enough patience to know the difference between a source and a symptom. Lydia was not specially gifted. Lydia was specially placed. The lake had positioned her at the center of Sparrow House the way a physician positions a needle. She did the work because she was where the work was being done. Any of us could have stood there. Some part of me has always known I would have if asked. Some part of me, even now, is sorry I was not asked. That is the sentence I have been rehearsing for 19 years and never written. I am writing it now. The girl Lydia disliked was Monty Vale. Monty was not strange. We made her strange by deciding she was. She was round-faced, nervous, and too eager to be included. She laughed too loudly because she was always arriving at the end of a joke. She had a habit of licking her lips when she was frightened, and once Lydia noticed it, the rest of us noticed it too. By Wednesday, it was the only thing about her any of us could see. Lydia said Monty was not like us. That was all she said. Not like us. It was enough. The first time I heard the lake, it was Thursday rest hour. The cabin was dim and hot. Miss Della sat outside on the steps with a magazine in her lap, fanning herself with a folded letter. The rest of us lay on our cots, pretending to sleep. The sound came from beneath the floorboards, low and almost tuneless, the way someone hums when they have been dead a long time and are remembering a song. I opened my eyes. Across the room, Lydia had opened hers. So had Paula, Ginny, Alice, and Mary Catherine. Every girl in Sparrow House was awake, except Miss Della, who sat outside close enough that I could see one of her shoes through the open door, hearing nothing. Then a word came into me, not spoken, not heard, placed, apart. Across the cabin, Paula whispered it. Then Ginny whispered it. Then Alice. Then Mary Catherine. Then Lydia smiled, the way a chosen child smiles when the teacher calls her name. Marnie sat up and began very quietly to cry. Miss Della looked in from the steps and said, "Girls, enough whispering. Rest hour means rest." She had not heard. That was the first lesson the lake taught us. Adults could not hear it. Whatever spoke beneath the floorboards spoke at a frequency only children received. It happened again at supper. The dining hall was full of forks and chairs and noise, and beneath all of it came the same low humming. Every child in the room went still while the counselors kept talking, laughing, and asking for more bread. A boy at the next table turned slowly and looked at Marnie. Then another. Then another. Soon half the dining hall was looking at her. The word came again. Apart. Lydia leaned close to Marnie and said, softly enough that no counselor heard, "The water knows." Marnie's lips trembled. Knows what? Lydia smiled. That you don't belong. I want you to understand, Mr. Graves, that we did not feel afraid then. We felt relieved. The lake had given us a rule, and Lydia had given it a sentence. And the rule was that it was someone else and not us. Children love rules when the rules tell them they are safe and someone else is not. After supper, there was a campfire with songs, lemonade in tin cups, and smoke that blew into our eyes. Marnie sat alone on the far end of our log, holding her cup with both hands. Lydia leaned close to me and whispered, "Look at her. She is waiting for someone to tell her she can stay." I looked. It was the cruelest sentence I have ever heard a child speak. Not because it was untrue, but because it was a diagnosis. Lydia had named exactly what Marnie was hoping for, and the lake had taught Lydia how. When the songs ended, Miss Della began walking us back up the hill. Halfway there, Lydia stopped and said she had left her sweater. Miss Della sighed and told her to fetch it quickly. Lydia looked at 6 of us, then at Marnie and said, "You too." Marnie smiled when she was included. That is the detail that hurts most now. She smiled, as if something in the world had finally opened. We followed Lydia down the path. The campfire had burned low, and the other cabins were already climbing the hill. Soon we were alone by the lake, 7 girls and Marnie Vale standing where the grass gave way to sand. The lake began to hum. This time it did not come from beneath the ground. It came from the water, a low sound deep enough to feel in the teeth. Across the lake, above the far tree line, a light appeared. At first, it looked like a lantern someone had hung in the air. Then it grew, white at the center and blue around the edges, still as an eye. The humming stopped, and then all sound stopped with it. The camp disappeared into silence. There were no crickets, no frogs, no leaves moving in the trees, no water touching the shore. And for one impossible moment, not even the sound of our own breathing. The counselors were only a few hundred yards away, but they might as well have been in another century. I could see Miss Della on the path, turning back as if she had remembered us. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. She waved. We did not wave back. The light over the lake brightened, and the word came again. Apart. Just the one word. I want you to understand that, Mr. Graves. The lake did not give us instructions. It did not say choose or send, or any other thing the human mind would invent later to make sense of it. It said only, apart, and we knew what to do. The way a fish knows where the current goes. Marnie shook her head. She understood, too. The lake had not said her name. It did not need to. She began backing away from the water, but Paula took her arm, Ginny took the other, Mary Catherine stood behind her, and Alice picked up Marnie's shoes from the sand. I remember thinking in that moment that this was sensible. If she was going into the water, her shoes should stay dry. That is how far gone we were. Not wild, not screaming, but orderly and obedient, as if we were performing a task assigned before supper. Marnie looked at me with silent tears on her face and mouthed my name. Elaine. I saw it. I knew it. I did nothing. Lydia stepped close to Marnie and touched her forehead with 2 fingers, the way a priest blesses a sick child. Then she pointed toward the lake. We pushed Marnie into the water. I say we because I will not let the others carry what belongs also to me. Her heels dragged in the sand, then she stumbled into the shallows. The water darkened her socks. She tried to turn back, but Lydia stepped in after her, a dress hem floating around her knees, and the rest of us followed. The water was unnaturally cold, It climbed my legs like hands. Miss Della had reached the bottom of the hill by then. I could see her running toward us, her face frightened. But still, I heard nothing. No shouting, no footsteps, no splash. She ran straight into the silence the way a woman runs into glass. I saw her stop, not because she wanted to, but because she could not cross it. Her hands pressed against empty air. Her mouth opened and closed. She pounded at nothing while 8 girls stood in the water and watched Monty Vale walk forward into the dark. Monty was waist deep, then chest deep. Lydia took her by the shoulders and turned her toward the open water. Monty's mouth formed words.
Please. I want my mother. Please.
I will tell you something I have never told anyone, Mr. Graves. When Marnie's hand brushed mine in the cold water, I held it, just for a second. I held her wrist and felt her fingers close around mine. And I let her think for that 1 second that I was on her side. Then Lydia looked at me. I let go.
Monty took 1 step forward, then another. The lake remained flat around her. No ripples, no rings. It accepted her without disturbance. She was up to her chin when she stopped. She did not go under all at once. The lake took her slowly, the way a careful animal takes a thing it has been hunting for a long time. The top of her head was the last to go. I remember her hair, dark and wet, fanning out for 1 moment on the surface like the petals of a black flower. Then it was gone. The light over the trees blinked once and went out. Sound returned all at once. Miss Della screamed. The frogs shrieked from the reeds. The water slapped against our legs. Marnie's name tore through the camp from a dozen throats, though none of us had spoken it while it mattered. I smelled the lake mud then, very close, the way you smell a thing when you have been holding it underwater. The men came running. Counselors waded in. A boat was dragged from the dock. The lake was searched until morning. They did not find her. They did not even find Bubbles. The official story was that Monty Vale had wandered into the lake during some childish game and drowned. The newspapers used the word tragedy and the word misadventure. Miss Della was dismissed, though I do not know what she could have done. I saw Miss Della once more before she left. It was the morning after. The counselors were packing Marnie's belongings into her trunk to send home, and I had come to deliver a hairbrush I had found beneath my cot. I do not know why I brought it. Miss Della was kneeling beside the open trunk. She had been crying for hours, and her hair had come loose from its pins. She looked up at me, and for a long moment she could not seem to remember who I was. Then she said,
Elaine, what happened down there? It wasn't a...
She stopped. Her mouth shaped the next word and did not release it. She tried again. The word would not come. She closed her mouth and looked back down at the trunk. The latch of the trunk was broken. It hung loose. I noticed that. And I noticed how she would not finish her sentence. And I told myself even then that I was imagining a connection between the two. I have been telling myself that for 19 years. Years passed. I trained as a nurse. I married a gentleman who knows I dislike lakes, but does not know why. We have no children. I have wondered whether that was chance or fear or punishment or gift. 3 months ago, a letter arrived with no return address. Inside was a photograph. 12 girls outside Sparrow House, summer of 1931. I recognized us all. Lydia in the center, smiling. Me beside her, desperate to belong. Marnie at the end of the row, hands folded over her stomach, trying to make herself smaller. In the photograph, every face had been scratched out except Marnie's. On the back, in ink the color of dried violets, were the words, "Dear Mother and Father, camp is fun." 2 weeks later, Paula walked into a river in Ohio and did not come out. Then Ginny was found in her own kitchen at 3 a.m, soaked from head to foot, though the house was dry. Her husband said she was repeating one word. He said it sounded like apart. She died before dawn. I am writing to you, Mr. Graves, because there are not many of us left. Lydia is not dead. Lydia is at a private hospital outside Chicago. I drove out there last month. They would not let me see her. Her husband, the surgeon, met me in the lobby with the bruised humility of a man who has stopped lying about his marriage. He told me Lydia had been found one night standing over a basin of bathwater in their home. She had filled it slowly, taking hours, and was leaning over it with her hair just touching the surface. When he tried to pull her away, she slapped him hard enough to split his lip and said in a voice that was no longer young, but somehow still 11 years old, "She still does not belong." He said the strangest thing about the hospital is the children. There are no children on her ward. The hospital is for adults. But sometimes at night the nurses find them. 3 or 4 little ones, 6 or 7 years old, standing in the hallway outside Lydia's door, perfectly silent and perfectly still. When the nurses ask whose children they are, the children only point at Lydia's door. When the nurses look back, the children are gone. I asked her husband what Lydia does in the room. He said she fills the basin, leans over it, and whispers something into the water. He said he tried once to listen. He said he could only catch one word. I think you can guess which. Mr. Graves, I have been having a dream. In the dream, I am standing on the shore of a lake I have never seen. It is not Hollowmere. It is somewhere else, somewhere newer. I am older than I am now, very old, with my husband long buried. I am holding a child's hand. I do not know the child. A girl, perhaps 8, with one pigtail tied with a ribbon and the other hanging loose. She is crying and asking me to take her home. I am calm. The light is rising over the trees on the far side of the water. And the worst part of the dream, Mr. Graves, the part I am writing this letter to confess, is that in the dream I look down at the child and feel something I have not felt since Marnie Vale's hand brushed mine in the cold water. I feel chosen. I do not want this dream to be a memory I have not yet made. I am writing to you because I think the lake travels. I think it has been traveling all along. I think what we believed was a place was only a shape it was wearing for that summer, the way a stray dog might wear a coat of fur on a cold night and shed it in another country. I think it is looking for the next of us, the next girl who has lost a brother, the next child who is desperate to belong, the next adult, gentle in her exterior, who has been trained by guilt and by years and by the slow, patient hum beneath the floorboards to lead a frightened child by the hand to the water's edge. I am asking you a question I cannot answer myself. If I am right, who taught Lydia? Signed, Elaine Mercer. There are silences that comfort us. The hush after snowfall. The stillness of a church before the first hymn. The quiet room where a sleeping child lies safe beneath a quilt. There are other silences. Mrs. Mercer asks who taught Lydia. I have an answer for her. I do not believe she will like it. I receive a great many letters at this hour. I have always told you that. What I have not told you is how many of them ask me in their final pages the same kind of question. Who taught my daughter to walk into the water? Who taught my son to scratch at the wall? Who told the children to gather outside the door of a woman who has not spoken in years? there is no satisfying answer. There is only the suggestion, which I have spent more nights than I should considering, that whatever did the teaching is patient enough to teach the teachers, and old enough to remember when summer camps were tents and a wooden cross between two pines, and older still than the trees on the far side of any lake. Our final letter tonight is quieter. There are no teeth in it, no light over a lake, and no old thing panting beneath the bunk. Only a boy who wanted to play. A boy who waited beside a ball field. A boy who is, perhaps, still waiting. This letter comes from Ruth Ann Calder. She asks that if I read it on the air, I say the boy's name. She is very specific about this. She writes that I must say it. His name was Simon Kells. Forgive me. There is a draft in this room. Let us begin. Dear Mr. Graves, the first time Simon Kells asked for a turn, nobody heard him. That is what I told myself for a long time. We were too loud. The game was too exciting. The counselors were calling us in. The sun was in our eyes. There are so many ways to build a house out of excuses, Mr. Graves. For most of my life, I lived inside mine quite comfortably. The walls were made of "we were children." The roof was made of "I did not mean." The windows looked out on a single afternoon I had decided to remember in soft focus, the way my library remembers difficult books by their pleasant covers. I am writing to you because the house has begun to fall down. I am 47 years old. I have worked in libraries for most of my adult life. I have spent those years arranging stories so that other people could find them. I would like, before I am finished, to arrange this one properly. We were at Camp Mercy Pines in Pennsylvania in the summer of 1912. I was 9 years old. So was Simon, though he seemed younger, the way a careful child always does. Some children enter a room as if they own it. Simon entered as if he had borrowed the air and meant to return it in good condition. Camp Mercy Pines was tucked between two low ridges where the morning smelled of wet grass and wood smoke. There was a lake, a dining hall, and 6 cabins painted dark green. But the heart of the camp was the ball field. Every evening after supper, if it had not rained, we played until the dinner bell rang again for lights out. Dust rising around shoes, grass worn thin between bases, the old wooden bat with black tape around the handle, the smell of cut grass and leather, the way the sky turned orange behind the pines. I was good at baseball. That mattered to me then. I was a girl who could hit farther than most boys, and in 1912, that was a kind of magic. The counselors laughed and called me slugger. The boys groaned when I came up to bat. I carried that praise like treasure. Simon Kells was not good at baseball. He was not good at swimming either, or archery, or knots, or making friends quickly enough to avoid being alone. His father had died the year before. His mother worked at a bakery in Harrisburg and sent him to camp on a church scholarship. He arrived with 1 suitcase, 1 baseball glove, and shoes that were already too small. His glove was old and soft and brown. The leather strap that wrapped around the wrist was broken and hung loose. Inside the wrist, in fading ink, someone had written, "Frank Kells," his father's glove. Simon did not demand to play. That might have saved him. He asked, "Can I try? Can I be next? Is it my turn after Billy?" The boys always had reasons. Teams are full. We already started. You can catch later. You can bat next inning. Next inning became tomorrow. Tomorrow became after supper. After supper became maybe. One evening, while the boys were arguing about teams, Simon stood beside me and asked if I thought they would let him bat that day. I said, probably. He smiled. That smile still breaks my heart. It was not happiness yet. It was preparation for happiness. A child setting the table inside himself for a guest who might finally arrive. He did not bat that day. On August 12, 1912, the air was heavy and golden. It had rained in the morning, so the field smelled rich and muddy. By supper, the clouds had cleared, and every child in camp wanted to play. We had older boys, younger boys, 3 girls, 2 counselors, and not enough gloves. The game was chaotic and wonderful. Rules changed every inning. Little kids were given 5 strikes. Bigger kids were told not to smash the ball into the woods. Nobody listened. Simon stood by the backstop with his father's glove on his left hand, the broken strap hanging loose at his wrist. Every inning he asked if he could try now. Billy Harrow told him next, and then Billy batted again. Simon asked if it was his turn now. One of the older boys told him he was too little. Simon said, "I'm 9. Someone said, "You throw like 6. Everybody laughed. Not everybody. I did not laugh, but I smiled. Sometimes a smile is worse, because it asks to be forgiven before it has earned forgiveness. The sun dropped lower. The counselors began saying, "One more inning." Simon came to me then, not Billy and not the counselors, but me, because I had been kind enough to make him hope. He asked if I could tell them he could try. I looked at the field. I looked at the boys. I looked at the place where I belong because I could hit and run and be useful. Then I looked at Simon, with his glasses sliding down his nose, his cheeks flushed, and his glove held open. I said, "Maybe next game." His face changed so gently I almost missed it. Hope did not break all at once. It folded. The inning ended. The counselors called us in. Bats were dropped, gloves were gathered, and someone kicked dust over home plate. Simon stayed. Through the backstop, as we walked away, I saw him standing in the gathering dark with his father's glove held against his chest. Small boy, big glove, broken strap. Billy called for him to come on, and Simon said, "I just want one turn." Billy told him to play by himself then. That night, Simon's bunk was empty. His shoes were under his bed. His pajamas were folded on his pillow. His father's glove was missing. They searched the camp, the woods, and the lake. They found his flashlight near second base, though no one could explain why he had brought it there. The beam was weak and yellow, but it still worked. They found footprints in the damp clay around home plate, bare feet, Simon's size, going round and round the bases. First, second, third, home. Again and again and again. By morning, the prints had dried, hard as pottery. His mother came in the afternoon wearing a blue dress with flower on the hem. She had not thought to brush herself clean. She sat on the bench near first base and held Simon's glove in her lap. They had found it in left field after dawn. The glove was wet, though there had been no rain. Mrs. Kells pressed it to her face and made a sound I had never heard from an adult. Not crying and not screaming, but something beneath both. I came near her because no one was speaking to her, and because I was a coward and wanted credit for being kind. She looked up at me. Her eyes were dry by then, quite dry. She said, "He never." Then she stopped. I waited, but she did not finish. She looked at me for a long time, and I had the awful feeling that she was waiting for me to finish her sentence for her, as if she suspected I knew the next word. I did not know it. I have wondered since whether she did, and whether what stopped her tongue was the same thing that stopped Mr. Evers in another summer in another state, and Miss Della's in a third. Camp closed for 2 days, then reopened. I wish that shocked me. It does not anymore. Adults are skilled at continuing. But the ball field changed. No one wanted to play at dusk. If a ball rolled into left field, boys argued over who had to fetch it. Sometimes, just after sundown, you could hear the backstop rattle. Not loudly, only once. A small metallic tremble, as if someone had slipped their fingers through the wire. The next summer, I returned to Mercy Pines. I do not know why. My mother said it would be healthy. My father said lightning never strikes the same place twice, which is a foolish thing to say about anything that waits. On August 12th, after supper, nobody scheduled baseball. That was deliberate. Instead, there was a sing-along by the lake. I left to use the latrine. That is true. I did not plan to go to the field, but when I came out, I heard something. A ball striking dirt, soft, then rolling. I walked toward the sound. The ball field was empty, at least I thought it was. The sky was deep blue. The first stars had appeared. The bases glowed faintly in the dark. At home plate stood Simon Kells. He was wearing the same shorts, the same striped shirt, and the same two small shoes he had not been wearing when he vanished. His father's glove was on his left hand, the strap hanging loose. One of his shoelaces was tied, and the other was not. He looked exactly as he had the year before, 9 years old, small, careful, hopeful. A baseball lay at his feet. He bent, picked it up, and held it out to me. "Is it my turn now?" he asked. His voice was not frightening. That is important. It was not hollow or ghostly. It was Simon's voice, plain and shy and patient. The voice of a boy who had waited through one very long inning and was trying not to be rude. I ran. I did not tell anyone. That was the beginning of my real shame. Not because I had failed to help Simon before he disappeared, but because even after he came back, all he wanted was a turn, and I ran from him again. Years passed. I worked in libraries. I married a quiet man who loved trains and apple pie. We had one daughter. My husband died before the last war began, and grief made the house so still that for a while I could hear every clock in every room. I became, by outward appearance, a sensible woman. But every August 12th, I thought of Simon. Some years I dreamed of the ball field. Some years I heard a ball rolling across my bedroom floor, though there was no ball when I turned on the lamp. In 1938, on my 35th birthday, my daughter gave me an old baseball glove she had found in a second-hand shop. She thought it would make me smile. Inside the wrist, in faded ink, was Frank Kells. The leather strap was broken. I dropped it. I told my daughter I was fine. I was not fine. I wrapped the glove in newspaper and put it in a box in the pantry. The next morning, it was on the kitchen table, open and waiting. That August 12th, I drove to the old camp. Mercy Pines had been abandoned for years. The road was overgrown. The cabins were gone or collapsed. The dining hall was only a blackened foundation. But the ball field remained. Grass had grown high over the infield. Saplings had come up beyond first base. The backstop leaned to one side, rusted and full of holes. Home plate was still there. White rubber, dirty but visible, set into the earth like a small grave marker. I stood beside it, holding Simon's glove. Dusk came slowly. And then, from left field, I heard him. "Can I have a turn?" He came out of the trees carrying a baseball. Still 9, still small, still Simon. One shoelace tied, the other not. I did not run this time. He stopped near the pitcher's mound and asked, "Is it my turn now?" I nodded. He smiled. I have replayed that smile in my mind for many years, Mr. Graves, and I have only recently begun to ask myself why a smile from a child should have looked so much like a thing being learned. He tossed me the ball. I caught it. My hand felt instantly cold. He walked to home plate and picked up a bat that had not been there a moment before, too big for him, with black tape around the handle. I stood on the mound. I was 35 years old, crying so hard I could barely see. I threw badly. The ball bounced before it reached him. Simon laughed. Here is the detail I have only just learned to see properly. Simon laughed the way someone laughs who has heard laughter before. Not the way a child laughs, but the way a child laughs when the child is a thoughtful student of children. I threw again. He swung and missed. He looked worried and asked if he got another. I said yes. My voice cracked on the word. He nodded seriously, the way a careful child would. I pitched again. He hit it. A grounder past first base. He dropped the bat and ran, slow, awkward, and determined. He touched first base, then turned to look at me. "Do I keep going?" he asked. I told him yes, and Simon kept going. He ran to second, then third, and by then I could hear other voices, children faint and far away, cheering. Simon rounded third and came home. When his foot touched the plate, the field brightened for one moment with warm orange evening light. Not moonlight, not ghost light. Sunset. The sunset from August 12th, 1912. I saw the camp as it had been, cabins whole, trees smaller, children gathered near the backstop, counselors in white shirts, dust rising around shoes. I saw myself at 9 years old, standing with the other children, watching Simon run home. The smell of cut grass and leather was so thick I could taste it. He looked at my younger self. He smiled at her. She did not smile back. She had not yet earned the right. Then the light faded. The field was dark again. Simon stood at home plate, breathing hard, though he had no reason to breathe. He looked at me and asked, "Do I get another turn?" That is when I should have understood. I did not. For 12 years, every August 12th, I have driven to Mercy Pines. I bring baseballs. I bring a better bat. Some years we play for an hour. Some years only a few minutes. Some years he asks about his mother. And once, only once, he said quietly, "She packed cookies." I always bring cookies now. I told myself all these years that I was offering him mercy. A turn, a turn. Always one more turn. Always one more August. I told myself I was the only person who would ever come back for him, and that this was a kindness. Mr. Graves, I have been a librarian for most of my adult life. I know the difference between a story and a record. I have been telling myself a story. The record is this. A boy vanished from a ball field in 1912. The thing that came back the next summer is not the boy. It wears him the way it wears other shapes elsewhere. It learned the smile. It learned the laugh. It learned to ask. And what it has learned from me across 12 patient summers is how to be wanted back. I am writing this letter on August 8th, 1950. Last week, a baseball arrived in my mailbox. There was no postage. There was no return address. Yellowed leather, very old. Written across it in a child's careful printing were the words, "Can your friends come too?" I understood them all wrong at first. I thought he meant the children we had wronged, the boys and girls of Mercy Pines, 1912. Then I found the photograph he sent next. The photograph was of all of us, our cabin group outside the dining hall. Billy Harrow was in the back row. He died in 1944. 2 other boys from the field are buried now, too. A girl named Patty, who once told Simon he could not be on our team, died this past winter of pneumonia. Each of them has a baseball at their feet that was not there before. so do I. I am the only one of them still living. Mr. Graves, I do not think Simon is angry. That would be easier to bear. I think Simon, or what wears Simon, has been very patient with me. I think it understands that I am the door. I have been opening that door one summer at a time for 12 years. I have been bringing it cookies. I have been bringing it baseballs. I have been bringing it the names of other children, written carefully on letters I have sent to old cabin mates and their widows. One letter came back from Billy Harrow's widow. She wrote that in the last hour before he died, Billy kept raising one hand from the blanket as if volunteering for something. His final words, she said, were, "Tell the little fellow he's up." I think Simon is calling the roster. I think the roster will not stop with the children of Mercy Pines. I think the next children he calls will be the ones I bring to him by reading their names aloud at the edge of that field, the way I have read so many names aloud already, mistaking my voice for a voice of mercy. I am writing to you, Mr. Graves, because I will not be at the field this August 12th. I will not be at the field any August again. I have written this letter so that someone besides me will know what I have done. I am asking one thing of you. When you read my letter aloud, you must say his name. You must. He will know if you do not. He listens for it. That is how he is summoned. I have summoned him every August by saying his name on the empty field, and I did not understand what I was doing until last week, when the baseballs began to arrive. Now I do. Saying his name brings him, and there are many, many more receivers than the one ball field in Pennsylvania. I am sorry, Mr. Graves. I have spent my life arranging other people's stories so that they could find them. Tonight, I am arranging mine so that you will find what I am trying to put into your hands. His name is the door. I leave it to you. Signed, Ruth Ann Calder. Simon Kells. Forgive me. I have been receiving letters at this hour for many years now. Mr. Voss and Mrs. Mercer and Mrs. Calder and so many others. I have read them all, believing that the reading was a kindness, that memory brought into the air becomes lighter than memory kept inside a chest. Tonight, for the first time, I am uncertain whether I have been a kindness or an instrument. Mrs. Calder asked me to say his name. Mrs. Mercer asked me a question I have not yet answered. Mr. Voss asked nothing. He only described a man and a dog walking together into the weeds outside Wichita, and the way their shadows crossed before they were gone. I do not know which of my correspondence is closest to the truth. I do not know whether the dog and the lake and the boy on the field are three separate hauntings or one hunger wearing three coats. I do not know who taught Lydia Trask, or who is teaching Elaine Mercer in her dreams, or who, even now, is listening to my voice through a kitchen radio in some town I have never visited, and finding herself thinking of an empty ball field, a glove with a broken strap, and a little boy she once refused to let play. I know only this. There are seasons in childhood when the world grows watchful. The dog days. The long, hot weeks when the boundary thins and the dead become curious. The Greeks knew it. The mothers of frightened children knew it. The counselors at Juniper Cross and Hollowmere and Mercy Pines knew it, in some part of themselves they would not name. We have forgotten. We send our children to camp. If you are listening to this broadcast tonight, and your road takes you past an old camp, a dark lake, or a ball field sleeping under weeds, do not laugh at the stories children tell. Children know when the woods have changed. They know when the water is listening. They know the awful weight of waiting to be chosen. This is Victor Graves. You have been listening to The Lost Signal. If you are listening with a child tonight, hold them a little closer. Sleep well.